Hello everyone, my name is Teddy Fickrey. I'm out here in Old Town Alexandria in Virginia, and I'm out here at a place called Bruin's Slave Jail. And the statue behind me, if you look at the actual statue, is two sisters holding hands seeking freedom. What many people don't know about the history of Old Town Alexandria is that right here was a vibrant trading block for enslaved human beings. So I'm out here for a specific reason. Now, before I even go into the reasons as to why I'm out here, let me preface this conversation. As a first-generation immigrant from Ethiopia, I have to tread on this topic very carefully because I will never truly know the exact pains of African Americans. Because I could point to a country on a map and say that's where I come from, whereas, maybe close to 20 million African Americans in America cannot do that, and there's a pain that comes along with that. And that's not the only thing. When it comes to the traumas of the past, trauma is energy, and it passes on. So the traumas of systematic racism, the traumas of enslavement, the traumas of Jim Crow, segregation, the Great Reconstruction, all these things that have happened throughout history, America's history, lives on, and resides in the genes or in the DNA of African Americans, which I necessarily cannot talk about or even know. I can know about racism, for example, but there's a whole nother pain that comes along with having the lived experience of your ancestors, having lived through slavery, having lived through segregation and Jim Crow. So, all that being said, the reason I'm out here is, I see what's taking place in America, where instead of healing the wounds of racism, instead of healing what was called America's original sin, we're actually moving backwards, right? And what I've witnessed is that there's politicians and media personalities on one side or the other. Either they're using African Americans to leveraging their pains for their own benefit, or demonizing them, right? So in that process, the chasm between so-called quote-unquote black folks and quote-unquote white folks, I don't even like these labels to begin with, because as Martin Luther King once said, we should be judged by the content of our character, not by the color of our skin. For our existence to be reduced down to a crayon color, to me, is very problematic. But this speaks to the caste system that resides here in America. And because of this, we're stuck in a perpetual state of tension. And we're being pitted against each other at all times to fight based on identities, instead of realizing that we're all kind of in this together. That the pains of one really is interconnected to the pains of all. Now, I come at this from a very different perspective. Because I'm from Ethiopia, when it comes to the history of racism, I could kind of take a step back and assess these things with a level of distance that might allow me to see things with a different perspective than others who have a very, they have a lot more proximity to it. And so this is what I know to be true from my perspective about the state of race relations in America. In Ethiopia, for example, we don't have necessarily a race, but we have ethnicity. And what is being done cunningly in Ethiopia is that each tribe, whether it's Amara, Oromo, Tagaru, Somali, right? Each tribe or ethnic affiliation is being conditioned to hate the other, right? And we fight each other, commit all kinds of heinous acts against each other, kill each other. Meanwhile, the wealth of the nation is being siphoned off to outsiders and benefiting a very tiny few percentage at the very top of Ethiopian society. What I did not realize is that the same thing is happening here in America. The difference being here, it's not necessarily ethnicity. The tribes here are based on, left versus right, black versus white, gay versus straight, believer versus non-believer. I mean, we have an endless number of identifications, and we're all being conditioned to vilify each other, right? And here's the truth of the matter: America, which a long time ago, if you came here as and you have a college degree, you attain some level of education, you're able to get a job and then retire, right? That dream has disappeared. The reality of what we find ourselves in now is, even if you go to college, you come out laden with debt, and most college students these days are working at baristas or Uber drivers, right? And so America has turned from a shining city on a hill into a pyramid scheme where wealth is being hoarded by a fractional few, and the rest of us are being pillaged, right? Inflation, the runaway cost of living, stagnant wages. These things are turning people, so the poor are becoming further impoverished, the working class are becoming poor, and the middle class is on the brink, right? Meanwhile, you have the top 20 people that own more than 20% of the wealth in America. You have billionaires who pay 0% taxes. You have corporations that pay 0 taxes. Meanwhile, we, the people, are paying 33% tax. And then on the back end, the tax money that we do have, that we've already paid the taxes. Now we had to pay for tolls. We had to pay for plastic bags. I mean, we're being taxed, and it's gone to the point where the average wealth, the savings of Americans is net zero. It's not because we don't know how to save. It's because our earning powers are disappearing on a year-to-year basis. And what's happening is that these wars that we're fighting, whether it's based on identification, ideology, they're preventing us from seeing the common struggle that we all have. And in a way, the number one tool that's being leveraged to not necessarily focus on the issue, but to distract all of us, has in fact become the pains of African Americans, where they're almost the legitimate grievances of African Americans are being co-opted and appropriated to defend the status quo and to divide America. Right now, I have to be very mindful when I say this. I'm not blaming the black folks in general. And then, like I said, I don't even like these labels to begin with. That's just my preference, right? I'm not telling people how to identify. That's up to them. That's their walk. But for example, when Black Lives Matter, that was people that have grievances in Missouri over Michael Brown. That was co-opted to become a corporate hashtag. And it's gotten to the point now where corporations think if they just stick a hashtag Black Lives Matter, that's enough, right? And so there's no changes policy-wise. Wealth is disappearing for everyone, especially the black community. And we're just supposed to be happy with a hashtag. And this is where we've arrived in America, where sloganeering is enough, apparently. And in this bamboozling, the Democrat Party is at the forefront of bamboozling African Americans. But it's not just the Democrat Party, because Republicans are doing the same thing to the so-called white, quote-unquote, white people, right? What Fox News is doing to the right and to white men and white women, it's the same thing. It's very easy to identify when somebody's being hoodwinked or being deceived. What's harder is when to identify when you're the one that's being deceived, and that's what's happening. Where there's an intentional game of gaslighting, of emotional manipulation, of really demagoguing to pit us against each other, right? So in this way, we're getting further and further away from justice, and getting closer and closer to our ultimate almost insolvency as individuals and collectively. And so America's headed on a very, very, very tragic path. There's credible talk now of civil war potentially happening later this year. This is where we're headed. It's impossible to even have a conversation these days without it devolving into a food fight. Everyone most people are just clamoring to just shut other people down. And what's really taking place is this: everyone wants to be heard, but nobody wants to listen, right? And in this paradigm, the conflict, the strife, we're becoming kindling wood. There's a spark can set off some tragic things, you know. And like I said, I know about these things firsthand. In Ethiopia, nobody would have imagined in 1974, when the king of Ethiopia got overthrown, that 2-3 years later, 500,000 Ethiopians would have been dead. It could happen, and nobody would have imagined Rwandans would hack each other to death, and that a million people would perish within a week and a half. It could happen, you know. When there's enough frustration, when there's enough resentment, and people feel hopeless, which is the state of America these days, the horrific things could happen. So I'm out here, part of the reason that I launched my love for Virginia is because of this. Like I said, I'm contemplating running for Congress, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do it yet. But even if I don't, it's to advocate the one thing that, for example, Fred Hampton or Malcolm X or Robert Kennedy or Martin Luther King, they all they figured something out, that we, the people, irrespective of our identification, of our ideology, we are better off working together, forming a collective front. And that's why each one of them got assassinated. And now we live in a paradigm, in an age of incessant demagoguery, right? Because that is how the status quo is maintained. But these people that you see that are encouraging you to view somebody that does not look like you, that does not think like you, to vilify them, they're getting paid by the very same system that they're pretending to be against, right? Now, I will end it with this. I too once used to vilify white people. I too once used to bash Republican voters until I became homeless for 2 years, 2.5 years almost. And what I realized is this, and it took seeing a 7-year-old white girl named Samantha in a homeless shelter in South Carolina, and I cried for 20 minutes straight when I saw that. It took that level of sorrow for me to realize that we all struggle. There's our political discourse has devolved to this: we get 1 crumb a day, they get 5 crumbs a day, they're privileged. I don't want to compete about who has it worse. I want us to work together so that we could all do better. We could do that. Or if we're fighting about who has it worse, eventually we're all going to get it worse, because every day, wealth is being transferred upward, and suffering is being socialized evenly to the rest of us. And as long as we focus on what we have that separates us, then we will never be able to form a collective unit, a coalition that transcends our differences in order to defend our common humanity and our common interests. And that is what we need more than anything else. Like I said, Martin Luther King figured this out. They loved Martin Luther King as long as was talking about justice through the prism of race. What he realized is that the justice is inclusive. And that's why he went to Tennessee to organize collectively black and white sanitation workers. He didn't last too long after that. Malcolm X was the same way. The establishment loved him as long as he was talking about the white devil this and white devil that. The minute that he changed and went to Mecca and came back and said, actually, anyone that's a friend of justice is a friend of mine, he didn't last too long after that. Fred Hampton, too. He sat down with what people, they'll be termed in this day and age, they'll be called white supremacists, the Young Patriots Organization. Sat down with them, and there's a picture of a Confederate flag on one side and a Black Panther Party flag on the other side. And he realized that only by uniting the disparate masses can we have justice in America. We need to get to that level of thinking. Anyone that tells you that someone who is struggling, that someone who doesn't look like you, that someone who's being, it might be to a different degree, But let me tell you, there's no privilege to be had when you're worried about whether or not your next paycheck is going to be enough, whether or not you have enough money to feed your children. That's not privilege. That's being pillaged, And what has become very abundantly clear is that millionaires working for billionaires is not working for us. So we need to reclaim our power, and we need to empower ourselves. So, like I said, I myself have a lot of contemplations to do as to whether or not I will, in fact, run for Congress in Virginia. But even if I don't, the message I want to get across is clear. Division is no path to justice. We need to unite. We need to bridge the gap and realize that someone that doesn't think like us, that doesn't look like us, is not our enemy. You know, true allyship is not based on guilt shaming. It's not based upon ridicule and lecturing. It's to understand that we're in this together, and that if you explain your pains in a way that's connected to their pains without diminishing them, that is how you form a powerful force that cannot be stopped. But if we insist on lecturing and minimizing the pains of other people, we will become islands unto ourselves. And so the way that we overcome is by the same way that these two sisters once did. Joining hands. Join hands with others that might not look like us, might not think like us, but they share the, I interviewed Marcia Dyson once, and she said the commonality of our pains. There's one thing that unites all human beings, is pain. We all go through pain. Let's not diminish each other's pains. Let us be empathetic and join hands together on that common walk, so we can have a common victory at the end of the day. By the way, if you want to get more information about My Love for VA, just go to My Love, the number 4, and then VA.com. Again, that's My Love, number 4, VA.com. You can also put My Love, number 4, Virginia.com. And you can also, on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, it's just at My Love, number 4, VA. All right? Thank you again, everyone. I'm going to do this once in a while. And maybe if I make the decision, once the prayer comes and goes, if there's an answer that comes to me, if I do in fact decide to run, the announcement will be here, because this is powerful. Because right here, this is the Bruin slave jail, right? But maybe like a mile down the street, it's called the Freedom House. So in a way, America has been in bondage for 400 years because for too long, people have ripped open the scab of the past in order to benefit themselves. And if we're going to make a difference, it's if we realize that it's not by fighting over old wounds, but by walking together towards a new day, that we can make a difference in this world. All right? Thank you, everyone. God bless you, and good night. Peace.